If you have your Bibles tonight, turn to Genesis chapter 12, verse 1. And it says, Now the Lord had said unto Abram, Get thee out of thy country, and from thy kindred, and from thy father's house, unto a land I will show thee. And I will make of thee a great nation, and I will bless thee, and make thy name great, and thou shalt be a blessing. And I will bless them that bless thee, and curse him that curseth thee. And in thee shall all families of the earth be blessed. And jump down to verse 7. And the Lord appeared unto Abram, and said, Unto thy seed will I give this land. And there builded he an altar unto the Lord, who appeared unto him. Pastor, could you pray? You may be seated. I want to talk to you for a few minutes tonight on this little title called But You Promised. Now, I don't know how many times as a dad I've heard that statement from my kids. But Dad, you promised. And I got looking back at it. I remember saying that to my parents. And usually, my parents always, if they promise something, we got it. Now, there was some things, some promises, like the one, you're going to get it when we get home, that I sure hoped that they would forget. Usually didn't, but I always hoped. But I got thinking about it. God made some promises to Abraham. If you go to chapter 13 of Genesis and verse 14, and the Lord said unto Abraham, after that Lot was separated from him, Lift up now thine eyes, and look from the place where thou art northward, and southward, and eastward, and westward. For all the land which thou seest, to thee will I give it, and to thy seed forever. And I will make thy seed as the dust of the earth, so that if a man can number the dust of the earth, then shall thy seed also be numbered. Arise, walk through the land in length of it, and in the breadth of it, for I will give it unto thee. And then you jump over to chapter 15 of Genesis, verse 5. And he brought him forth abroad, and said, Look now toward heaven, and tell the stars, if thou be able to number them. He said unto him, So shall thy seed be. Now, when Abraham was just a mere 75 years old, God told him, okay, it's time that you pack up your bags and you start walking until you get to the place that I'll show you. And then when you get to that place, when you walk all around it, you look as far as you can see to the north, and then you turn and you look to the south, and as far as you can see that way. And then you swing and you look east, and you look and see how far you can see. And you look and see how far you can see when you turn to the west. And all that land's going to be yours and for all your descendants. But not only that, when you're walking, everywhere you put your foot, that's going to be yours. Now, Abraham had to have had a little bit of faith, because at 75 years old, he had no kids. And his wife was getting up there too. And up to that point, she wasn't able to have kids, obviously, because they had none. But he trusted in the Lord and God, but you promised, so I'm going to do it. When he was approximately around 85 years old, that's when God told him, okay, Abraham, you look up in the sky. And all them stars, every one that you see, if you can number them, that's as many as your kids is going to be, your descendants is going to be. And, I'm sure that through all that time, it must have went through Abraham's head on different occasions. But God, you promised. When's it going to happen? I've walked hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of miles. I've stood up every morning and I look to the north. And then I look to the south. I look to the east and I look to the west. And you said that you was going to give that to me and to my children. But yet I have no children. And it seemed like Abraham needed constant reassurance from God. That even though he was walking by faith and following God's directions, because there's different times. You jump a couple chapters and once again God's telling them, your seed is going to be as the dust of the ground. And if you can count the dust, that's how great your descendants is going to be. And then again you go a couple more chapters and you look at the stars, and if you can count the stars, I'm sure that every morning that Abraham must have got up and said, but God, you promised. God, you promised. Here we are 10 more years down the road, and I still got no kids. There must have been some sort of doubt on different mornings in his mind that the promise just wasn't going to come. Because, well, him and his wife took it into their own hands and tried to rush God's timing, and Ishmael was born. Ishmael, being of the seed of Abraham, he become part of the promise, because God said it was going to be to all of his descendants and all of his seed. But Ishmael's descendants have been at odds with Isaac's descendants for thousands of years now. And when we try to rush God's plans, and we try to rush God's promises, because we get impatient and say, God, but you promised me. And we start acting like a spoiled little kid. But God, you promised me. And we rush it and we rush it. We end up causing more problems for our promise when it comes down the road. There'll be some problems that your promise will have to deal with because you got impatient with God's plan. I find it interesting that God told Abraham to go look and count the stars if he could. Stars are only visible in the dark. And during the darkest moments of his life, when his promise didn't seem possible, he could look up and see his promise. The reminder of his promise, it was only seen in his darkest moments. The same way with us when we're going through some dark moments and our promises are not visible and it seems that we've lost sight of them. It may even seem that the promise is dead. All we got to do is look up. Your promise is visible in the darkness. In your darkest moment, that's when your promise shines the brightest. Abraham was 100 years old when his promise was finally born. It took time for him to walk around and set his feet on ground to be claimed for his descendants. It also took a lot of time to get enough ground for as many as his descendants was going to be. Could it be that God's plan was so great that even Abraham didn't understand it? Abraham maybe didn't understand why it was taking so long for his promise to come. But he needed to walk a little bit farther. He needed to claim a little bit more ground. He needed to stretch his tent out a little bit bigger, because God's promise was even bigger than he could even comprehend. The land that he was claiming, it wouldn't even be used for well over 400 years after he died. He never fully seen the full extent of his promise. Yes, he seen the birth of his son, and he seen his grandson. and he seen his line starting to expand. But he never seen the full potential and the full promise and the full plan that God had, because it took that much longer for them to be big enough to occupy the land that he claimed. Had he received his promise back when God first made it, he maybe would have quit walking and quit claiming the ground that he was supposed to be claiming. I'm sure, once again, he probably thought many times, but God, you promised. But God, you promised. He was human, just like the rest of us. I know there's been countless times in my life when looking for the things that God's promised me. I've often said that in prayer. God, you promised. You promised that you was going to save my kids. You promised you was going to save my family. God, I don't understand why it's taken so long. But I have to remind myself that God has a greater plan. And when it is in His time, the promise will arrive. When the promise arrives, it will be even bigger than I expect it to be. It will be even bigger than I can comprehend it, because that's just the way God works. Even though it's not when I think it should be or when I want it to be, it will still be on time. Even when darkness obscures my view, I need to remember that I need to look up, because my promise is still visible. In our darkest moments, your promise will shine the brightest. And tonight, if you find yourself in a place where you've been saying to yourself, but God, you promised, maybe you're still underestimating the size of your promise. Just maybe God needs you to walk a little bit farther. Set your feet on some more ground, because that's what you're going to need to be able to contain your promise. You may have to raise your vision and look a little farther to the north. Maybe a little bit farther to the south, and a little farther to the east, and a whole lot farther to the west. Because God said everything that you see, it's going to be yours. We all have a habit of visualizing it with human eyes. And we look around. When you look around, you can count the number of the stars. But you're going to be a while doing it. But guess what? The number of stars, that's shining bright, that's the size of your promise. In reality, God's promise is large, and we may never, ever live long enough to see the total fruition of it. But we have to be like Sarah, and by faith judge Him faithful who has promised.